Joining me now are Representative Karen Bass, a Democrat from California, and Jonathan Capehart from the Washington Post. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Rev.
Thank you, Rev.
Congresswoman, I have to ask you, how can Republicans keep a straight face when they talk about this budget as a plan to help the middle class?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I don't know what middle class they're talking about, but I think it's really interesting because, you know, there's new leadership on the House Budget Committee. And so what I think we're seeing is Tom Price be actually more conservative than Paul Ryan was. And I think Paul Ryan was actually critical of part of the budget, the part on defense, the defense appropriation. So it's really interesting.
You know,
Quite
Jonathan,
scary notion.
You know, Jonathan, the president had some fun with the doom and gloom predictions Republicans made while he ran for re-election. Listen to this.
One Republican in Congress warned our policies would diminish employment and diminish stock prices. Diminish stock prices. Stock market's doubled since I came into office. Another predicted my re-election would spike gas prices to $6.60 a gallon. I don't know how he came up with that figure. $6.60. My opponent in that last election pledged that he could bring down the unemployment rate to 6% by 2016. Next year. At the end of next year, it's 5.5 now.
Jonathan, why aren't we seeing gas for $6.60?
For a whole lot of reasons. Look, the Republican Party has never been good trying to predict the results of the economic policies of Democratic presidents. I remember Republicans making the same arguments when President Clinton was in office and he wanted to raise taxes to try to get the deficit under control. And then what ended up happening by the end of President Clinton's term, there was a surplus, a huge surplus, something that freaked out Washington because they'd never seen it before. And so whenever Republicans predict doom and gloom when it comes to the budget, I always take it with a grain of salt. But what we saw there is a president in his last term, but a president sitting on incredible economic news, especially relative to what it was when he came into office.
Well, we're talking about incredible news. Congresswoman, look at this. It shows the deficit drop under President Obama, and it's pretty significant. By cutting the deficit, which is the Republicans' #1 priority. I mean, is this a made-up issue by the Republicans?
Well, absolutely, and it always was a made-up issue. But, you know, I was listening to you talk about that, and just think about it. Remember, Obamacare was going to destroy the economy.
Right.
And what has happened? You know, millions of people have health coverage, and it's actually working, and it's saving money, and people are doing much better. So the doom and gloom that they predicted, which was really just to scare people away from voting for the president, I think has obviously turned out to be completely false.
But budget differences, Jonathan, will help frame the 2016 debate, especially on income inequality. Listen to Jeb Bush talk about minimum wage.
We need to leave it to the private sector. I think state minimum wages are fine. The federal government shouldn't be doing this. This is one of those poll-driven deals. Politically, I'm sure it's a great soundbite. But from an economic point of view, this is not how we need to be successful.
Leave the minimum wage to the private sector. I mean, how do you fix income inequality with these same old ideas?
You can't. Leave minimum wage to the private sector. The private sector, which is profit-driven, which is squeeze as much profit out of operations and everything, and employee wages don't factor into any of that. And also, without a federal minimum wage or even raising it, what you're setting up is a patchwork system where people in California might get a great minimum wage, but the folks in Nevada, just over the border,
because you're going state by state,
you go state, yeah.
Which is their whole thing. It's almost like, well, it is like the states' rights movement. We'll do state by state immigration, state by state on marriage equality, state by state on minimum wage. But there is no strong federal national government protecting all American
Right,
citizens.
and it sort of makes hollow this concern all of a sudden for income inequality, for the middle class. You can't reduce income inequality and you can't fight for the middle class if you do not have a national strategy.
But that's the problem that we've got to encounter, those that have always fought against these state-by-state kinds of things from whatever the issue may be, Congresswoman. You're an organizer. It also makes it very difficult to organize because you've got to deal state by state. And that's what they want to be able to do, because if they can defeat you with minimum wage in Wisconsin, well, then you might win in Montana and on and on. So there's a strategy to this, and I think people need to wake up and understand there's a reason they don't want a national minimum wage, because they can keep running us through traps and the people suffer.
Well, absolutely. So whenever I hear the states' rights argument, to me, that is an argument about not doing something.
Right.
But you know what, though? I mean, we are organizers, and the activists are out there in several of the states fighting for their governors to expand Medicaid. So I do think that it can backfire on them as well. We're watching millions of people getting covered all around the country, but we still have these governors that are resistant. And so I think it takes a movement, it takes the organizing to pressure to turn that around.
And a determined movement, Jonathan, that keeps going. One thing I give the right is that even in the face of obvious defeat and obvious folly, they keep going. And I think that those that really want to represent the unspoken, we've got to have that same determination.
Right, same determination and same zeal.
And discipline.
And discipline. And the good thing in this fight, the folks pushing for minimum wage, pushing for the reduction of income inequality are on the right side.
That's correct. Congresswoman Karen Bass and Jonathan Capehart, thank you both for your time tonight.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks. Good to talk to both of you.